Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing the process of making this beautiful loungewear set using two free sewing patterns from Peppermint magazine, the robe jacket and the pants from the loungewear set. I'm absolutely in love with how this set turned out, so if you're interested in seeing how I made it, then just keep on watching. So starting off with the patterns, for the robe jacket I cut a straight size B, which equates to an Australian size 10 to 12, and for the pants I went with size D. The robe jacket pattern goes up to a bust size of 131 centimeters, while the pants go up to a hip size of 132 centimeters. The pants are quite cropped, so I started by lengthening the pattern by about 2 inches. There were no adjustment lines on the pattern, so I just made my own between the knee and ankle. I actually also ended up adding another 2 inches onto the hem when I cut these from the fabric, just because I'm 5'9", so I'm pretty tall, and I didn't want them to end up too short. So I'm just using the slash and spread method to lengthen the pattern, and I'm filling in the gap with some scrap paper which was left over from when I cut the pattern out. Also, links to all of the information on the patterns, fabric, and supplies I use in this video will be down in the description box below, so make sure to check that out if you're looking for something, or just ask me a question in the comments. For fabric, I used organic cotton double gauze in the color Smoke from 209 Fabric, which is this beautiful bluish gray color. And I had already pre-washed this, so here I'm just laying it out and getting ready to cut. So initially I had ordered 4 meters of this, which I thought would be enough, but as we'll see later on, that wasn't quite the case, and I wasn't able to fit both of these patterns. And this was totally my mistake. So normally when I cut patterns out, I lay out all of my pieces first to make sure that my layout works and that they'll all fit. But this time, since I had so much fabric to work with, I decided to just be lazy and go ahead and start cutting, which ended up being a bad idea because I actually ran out of fabric at the end. So that's really why I always test my layouts in the first place. So I was super annoyed at myself because I think if I had done a different layout, I probably could have made it work with 4 meters. But I had to leave the front pieces of the robe jacket out and order another 1.5 meters of fabric just to make sure I had enough with shrinkage in the wash, and then while I waited for that to arrive, I got to working on the pants. For this project, I ended up sewing all of my seams using my serger, threaded with 4 threads. Someone commented once and told me that just using 3 threads is not secure enough to sew seams with, and that's what I used to do. So I didn't know that before, but luckily I had 4 blue serger threads, which would work well for this project, and it just made it so much easier to both sew the seams and finish the edges all in one step. I really love my serger. So the first step of the pants is to attach the pockets, which is a really simple process of just a couple steps. I found both of these patterns really easy to follow actually, and I definitely recommend them if you're a beginner sewist. Whenever anyone asks me what project they should start with to learn sewing, I always recommend pajamas, just because they're a very low risk project. So pajamas typically don't have a lot of tailoring, they're a relaxed fit, so there's not a lot of fitting or adjusting that you'll have to do. And you'll just be wearing them around the house for the most part, so there's really no pressure to make sure they look perfect or professional. Plus, I love that these patterns are both free, so if you're interested in learning how to sew or taking on your first garment, I would highly recommend checking both of these patterns out. And you might notice that throughout this project, I'm not actually pressing the seams, which you're supposed to do. And this was partly just me wanting to work quickly on these, and like I said, not worrying about making them perfect since they're just pajamas. But I was also a little worried that using the iron on double gauze might affect the cushiness of it. So I just did finger pressing for the most part until the end of the project, when I finally did use my iron and realized it was totally fine and I could have been using it all along. But oh well, you live and you learn. So once the pockets were all attached, it was time to assemble the pant legs. And again, this is really simple. I started by sewing the outer seams of the front and back pieces together, followed by the inseams, and then turning one leg inside out, inserting it into the other leg with right sides together, and sewing the crotch seam. And again, using the serger on this made the process go by twice as fast. I'd say these pants don't take long to sew at all, and they could definitely be completed in one day from start to finish. Also, if you're a confident beginner and don't mind making alterations to your patterns, and you wanted to make these pants even faster and easier, you could omit the pockets and skip those steps altogether. I like having pockets on my pants, so I kept them in, but it's just an option. When doing the crotch seam, I always pin starting at the inseams to try and make sure that those seams both match up as best I can, and then I pin outwards towards the front and back from there. The next step is to do the elastic waistband, and this pattern does this the easier way, I'd say, which is to stitch the elastic down to the top of the pants, stretching the elastic as you go, and then folding it over to the inside once and top stitching it again. And I really like this method, especially for pajama pants and shorts, but typically for other regular pants, I prefer to do a waistband casing and then thread the elastic through that way. But this method is a lot quicker, and I definitely enjoy not having to thread the elastic through because that can be a bit tedious. So I just measured out the appropriate length of elastic that was comfortable for my waist, overlapped and stitched it together using my zigzag stitch on my machine, and then divided it into even quarters which were matched to the front, back, and side seams of the pants. And then I used my serger to attach it, making sure that I was stretching the elastic to fit the fabric between each seam. And this can be a little difficult. I find it easiest to hold on to the fabric and elastic at both the front and back so that it can easily move through the machine while you're stretching it. The final step is to hem the pants, and I did try these on beforehand just to make sure the length was okay, and it was perfect. So I went ahead and turned up the hems once by 1/2 inch and then a second time by 1 inch and stitched those both down. So that finished off the pants, and all I had to do was wait for the rest of my fabric for the robe jacket to arrive. It took about a week for my fabric to come, so here I'm just cutting out the final front 2 pieces after pre-washing it. I was really lucky actually that this was still in stock because I'm not sure what I would have done if it had sold out. The old saying does go measure twice and cut once, and that was definitely a lesson I learned in this process. The back of the robe jacket has an inverted pleat, which I think adds a really nice detail. So I'm just starting here by marking the pleat endpoint with a pin and then stitching from the notch down to that point. And you can baste the pleat down at the top if you like. I decided just to pin it since it gets stitched down later on when the collar is attached. I have made a few similar jackets to this pattern before, which are the Wixton unfolding jacket, and then the Fabric Store Nino jacket, which is another free pattern. So the process is really similar. You just start by attaching the shoulder seams together and then attaching the sleeves, and finally sewing the sleeve and side seams together in one go. So it comes together really quickly, and again I used my serger to do all of those seams. I actually forgot all about the belt loops until I got to the side seam point, but luckily I remembered and quickly stitched those onto the back before I went ahead and then did the side seams. Then for the sleeve hems, I'm using the same measurements as I did for the pants, so turning up first by 1/2 inch and then by 1 inch and stitching close to the folded edge. After that, it was time to attach the collar, and here I deviated a little bit from the instructions, so I actually hemmed the bottom of the jacket first, again turning it up 1/2 inch and then by another inch, and then I pinned the collar to the jacket with right sides together, matching the edge to the front edge and around the back neckline. And then when I got to the jacket hem, I sort of eyeballed where the collar should end, folded the collar in half with right sides together, and stitched straight across. So this way, when you turn the collar out, the bottom edge is neatly seamed, and it's the perfect measurement to attach it to the jacket. In contrast, the instructions said to just attach the collar, then fold up the entire hem of the jacket, including the collar, and stitch it down. But I feel like these extra steps just give it a much more professional looking finish, so it's worth the little bit of time and effort that it takes to do them. At this point, I switched over to my newer sewing machine because my old bobbin ran out, so I could make a new bobbin that fits this machine. I still love my vintage Singer, and it's working great ever since my partner helped me fix it, but when it broke, I bought the sort of updated version of it from Singer, which is this heavy-duty 4452. And it was on sale at the time, and it's the machine I recommend since you can't buy my vintage machine anymore. So I wanted to actually try using it myself to make sure what I'm recommending to you guys is good and high quality. And I have to say that it's a really great machine, and it definitely has some quality of life upgrades over the vintage machine, like the see-through bobbin cover and the automatic buttonhole setting. So I'm really enjoying this machine, and I'm kind of switching back and forth between both at the moment, but I can definitely say that after having used this for about a month or two, I'm really comfortable with recommending it, and I do have a link for it in the description box below. So then with one side of the collar attached, what I'm doing is folding it over so that it covers the seam I just made, and then I'm pinning it from the right side along that seam line, making sure that I'm catching the fold on the wrong side at the same time, so that I can stitch in the ditch and close the collar off while sort of hiding the seam from the right side. I didn't do it perfectly because the fabric kept shifting a little on me due to the creases and ridges that are characteristic of double gauze, but I was pretty happy with the result, and from a distance you'd never know. The last step of the jacket was to do the belt, and I sort of did my own thing for this again. So I attached the two pieces at the center back, and then instead of just folding it all in and stitching around the edges, I folded it at each end with right sides together, while also folding back one edge by the seam allowance. And what this does is it closes off that end with a nice seam, really similar to how I finished off the ends of the collar. So with that done, all I had to do was fold it again with wrong sides together, tucking in that long edge, and then top stitching it just along that one side. And with that, this loungewear set is all done. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I think it's exactly how I envisioned it. I love the color of the fabric. I think it's the perfect calming sort of neutral, and I cannot get over how comfortable it is. It literally feels like I'm wearing a cloud. So I think I'm probably going to be living in this set throughout spring and summer, as it's really nice and light, and it's going to be the perfect thing to lounge around in as the weather gets warmer. And here's the fit of the pants. So with the combined added length of about 4 inches to the inseam, these hit me right at the ankle, which is perfect and exactly what I wanted. So that is it for this project. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like it, and also subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.